Welcome to the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast, brought to you by Visant Consulting, where we discuss topics related to all things pharmacy compliance. Now, please welcome your host, board-certified sterile compounding pharmacist, Seth DePasquale.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in today. And we have a very special guest. Somebody I actually went to the same school, pharmacy school, at somewhat separate times, overlapped by 1 year. But let me give you a little bit of background on who we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about today. So Greg Stanley received his Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy in 1998, having also completed undergraduate research fellowships in Biological Environmental Sciences and Polymer Sciences, and has over 25 years of experience with compounded sterile products, both in hospital and home infusion settings. Greg has extensive experience with policy development, training, pharmacy management, and regulatory compliance. Currently, Greg is an associate director at SUNY Upstate Medical Center. He's involved with several projects related to USP 797 and USP 800. His oversight includes sterile compounding, hazardous compounding, and robotic automated technologies. So, Greg, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being on. Why don't you give us a little bit, I kind of went over your bio, but why don't you give us a little bit of background in your own words?
Sure, Seth, thanks first of all for having me. I currently reside in sunny Syracuse, New York. As I look out the window, it's snowing yet again, but nonetheless, I work for Upstate Medical University. So we are a state of New York hospital. So we're kind of evolving into a full-fledged health system. We're technically a single hospital, but a multi-campus academic medical center. And we have a diverse patient population that we serve. We have both an adult and a pediatric hospital, several cancer centers, and ambulatory infusion suites. And to facilitate those needs, I oversee several sterile compounding labs located throughout various locations. So currently, I oversee the operation of 5 sterile compounding labs, but that number is growing as the health system grows.
Cool. I think that what's interesting, you and I have taken, very different paths, and we graduated from Albany. You ended up in Syracuse, and I'm actually down here in Lexington, Kentucky. But we both sort of have gravitated into this 797 USP 800 or brought in broader terms regulatory space, which is really, really interesting. And one of the topics that we're going to talk about today, which I haven't talked about thus far on my podcast, we've talked about workflow in compounding procedures, but specifically, let's talk about IV workflow technologies and how you got into using them, and what led you to consider the use of IV workflow technologies.
Yeah, so a little bit of a backstory. I had spent the better part of 15 years working in home infusion pharmacy. So it was a single isolated compounding lab that I managed. And coming to a hospital setting that had multiple sites, I found out very quickly that our pharmacy responsibilities for production were exceedingly high. On a given year, our institution will probably produce close to 250,000 sterile compounded doses per year. And we accomplished that with roughly 70 to 75 staff members, both licensed technicians and pharmacists. So
wow.
We recognized very quickly that we had a very large role in providing that level of care and those products to our patients. And the writing was on the wall between USP regulations and ISMP, who sort of discouraged institutions from using more antiquated methods for IV preparation and checking. Because we so heavily rely on certified and licensed technician personnel to facilitate the production of these items, there was always struggles that our health system had to sort of synchronize our efforts and harmonize our processes amongst multiple labs with multiple individuals. So we sort of embarked on a mission to institute and deploy a single comprehensive platform to facilitate those production efforts.
Very cool. There's a, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Thrive Coalition for IV Accuracy, and it's sort of a IV workflow technology checklist. Where the first item is workflow management software, barcode scanning, volume verification, auto labeling, and auto documentation. And overall, I think those are sort of the within the Thrive Coalition, those are the main goals that they are looking to do with IV workflow technology. What goals were you looking to achieve by adopting workflow technologies in your setting?
Well, up to the point we adopted this single platform, we did have a hybrid model where we instituted and utilized some rudimentary technologies. We had a little of experience with barcode technologies and photographic evidence of various steps. So we had dipped our toe into IV platforms previously, but when we took a look at our growing health system, we really identified 4 primary goals for deploying a robust single platform. The first, obviously, is the safety element. Like I said, we saw the benefits of barcode technology. We saw the benefits of high resolution photographs, but we also took it one step further, and we decided on a product that allowed us to add the addition of gravimetric analysis. So using a high precision scale to aid in verification of proper compounding of those medications. The second thing that we looked to achieve was standardization. Obviously the hallmark of a successful lab is it's not how your best tech does it, it's how your worst tech does it. And to sort of level the playing field, because there will be different levels of skill, there'll be different levels of experience, but if you can adopt a technology that really embraces standardization, I think that goes a long way, especially when you're trying to incorporate new staff alongside more seasoned, experienced individuals. So standardization was a big goal that we wanted to achieve. The third is sort of new for us, which is the analytical benefits of deploying an IV workflow technology. Obviously with a hybrid model of producing things on various platforms, it's often difficult to collate that data. And although I don't want to operate like an Amazon because we're providing a clinical service, it is important at times to sort of get more robust metrics and analytics for making sterile compounds, just for the sake of deploying proper resources, optimizing productivity. And we also want to, respond to those acuity needs. Being in an acute care hospital, we're always under the pressures of getting products to patients in a timely manner, especially for various conditions where we obviously have a robust critical care medicine department, a pediatric and an emergency room, ORs and such. So we thought having a robust platform that allowed us to look at analytics would help us make those necessary pivots to meet those demands. And then the fourth one is really control. The last 3 or 4 years have been, kind of difficult to navigate the regulatory waters because you have FDA guidance, you have USP 797 revisions, and you had the appeal in 2019, and now you have a subsequent reboot that might kind of be codified in 2022 or 2023. But nonetheless, we wanted to be able to control a centralized drug library so we can make the necessary edits to beyond use date assignments, incorporate all the necessary changes to align with the regulatory standards, and do that in an efficient manner versus having each of our independent facilities manage their formulary, manage their master formulation and compounding records. So our fourth goal was just basically having a centralized control of how we structure our procedures so that we can make those necessary pivots in response to those new standards.
So what I kind of honed in there on a particular aspect that you talked about was analytics. So, you know, and this kind of goes along with another question I'm going to get to, but did you have to, there's all these different platforms that we're using, you know, there may be one that's holds our compounding formulation. There's another what that holds patient information and you know, maybe the IV workflow and get gravimetrics. And was the analytics portion of things, was that a third party developed that integrated some of the technologies together, or how did you exactly gather the analytics, and how cumbersome is it for you to gather some of those analytics?
Well, in the past, we just did rudimentary dose counts. So at a given time, I had a good sense of our production numbers. You know, we made X amount of widgets at a particular lab on a certain day. But what we were unable to do is look at the ebbs and flows throughout a workday to properly just deploy staff resources. So the analytics that we found that we were seeking would be to actually look at real-time data, not only of the production amounts, but also the ebbs and flows of the peak times of production, the lulls in production. And we wanted to seek out a solution for that within the same system that we elected to deploy at our institution. And that would be important too, for not only setting minimum expectations for our staff, but also using it as sort of an educational tool so that we can evaluate on a continual basis some staff who may struggle meeting the demands for that area. So I thought the data would be very vital for us to making those assessments and then deploying the proper resources for both staff education and actually supplementing the labs at certain times where the production analytics would dictate that we need to you know, fortify our resources for those periods of time.
Yeah, I you know, personally, I think that a big gap in pharmacy, even specifically within compounding, has been data collection, and you know, lack of you know, a real actual quality control, quality assurance programs, because we haven't really been forced to by standard necessarily. And you know, gathering data is a double-edged sword. So if you're gathering data and it's showing that you're not performing well and you're making a lot of mistakes, then that might not look so good. But we have to, I feel as a profession, have to embrace this continuous quality improvement approach to medicine. And really what that kind of, you know, down the line looks like is, you know, rather than having corrective actions based on our analytics, let's get more into preventative actions and not have errors in the first place, which is, you know, a big component to all of what we're talking about. But, you know, more specifically, like, walk us through the process. What steps did you have to take in order to successfully deploy this IV workflow technology?
Sure. It started with identifying the key stakeholders. You know, so we had to assemble a team, and you know, we utilize a pretty robust electronic medical record. So our hospital EMR, we understood that there was going to be significant interface challenges. So we had to elicit some support from other departments. So we assembled a team primarily consisting of some IT resources from our EMR department, and both clinical and operational pharmacy personnel, both pharmacists and technicians. And when we assembled that team, we sort of had a 5 to 6 month planning phase that we outlined that included some weekly meetings with our customer reps and their team. And then we sort of structured our approach to various phases. And that initially started with the building of our drug library, the interface testing, and other elements. And then that took approximately 100 to 150 man hours. So when you want to kind of deploy a very robust system, it does require that you provide the proper resources so that it doesn't fall flat on its face. And so we were fortunate that we assembled a really good team. We gave them the resource of time to really walk through this process and not kind of half-heartedly go through the steps, because we knew we had one opportunity to do it right and get it right when we deployed the system. So at the tail end of it, we sort of had some robust super user training, and then we did a train the trainer. So we had sort of a 2-week period where 150 employees kind of marched into a conference room over, several 4-hour education sessions. And then we were sort of ready to go live. And then once we did that, we dove in with both feet. So we ripped the Band-Aid off. We kept our legacy systems operating just for an interim period of time in case we had to hit the eject button. But we went live in September of 2020. At the single site, and then the other sites followed suit in the coming weeks. I would say the first month there was some headaches, because despite as much testing as you may do in the planning phases, you don't come across every single real world scenario. Absolutely. So we had to kind of backtrack and look at some interface challenges, but that was sort of the process we followed. And for the most part, we adopted it pretty universally. I think at our primary site, our capture rate using the technology was over 98%. So we definitely accomplished our goal of standardization and then harmonizing all our production into that single platform.
That's excellent. What were, you mentioned a couple, bumps in the road that you had, but what were some of the initial challenges during the early phases of its use? Maybe getting onboarding people into the system, and what did you guys encounter?
Yeah, I would probably say it's the staff psychology more than anything else. We had a lot of legacy staff that were accustomed to making sterile compounds in a certain manner. Methods for checking, you have more seasoned staff that were doing it a certain way for years and years and years. So in some respect, it was a tougher sell to some of our more seasoned staff to kind of break through that psychological barrier where people were sort of hesitant and resistant to change. Adopting change, especially for something that is this comprehensive, is a struggle. So there's a sales component to what my role was in terms of trying to get the staff to adopt and embrace the technology. Obviously, we had some technical issues with our interface. Obviously, the challenges with getting any IV workflow technology system to play nice with your hospital EMR, it's always met with challenges. But for the most part, it was really a psychological endeavor that we had to overcome. So it was a lot of really talking up the product, really promoting the product, trying to get the buy-in from the staff, and embracing the fact that although, the first 4 to 6 weeks, we saw sort of a production decline, our response time kind of took a little bit of hit. But once we got a little more seasoned and got our feet wet, we actually started seeing more positive metrics, even in regards to response time and average productivity time. So I think overall, it was a win-win for us.
Yeah, just as a, just to bring a little bit of my own experience into that particular conversation in terms of, getting full buy-in and potentially, a culture change. I think, one of the things that I've experienced in doing process mapping and value stream mapping is involving the actual staff at the earliest stages of the implementation and planning, honestly. Because it basically, you're sort of asking the questions of those seasoned operators. What do you think, given the system that we're using, what do you think is the best way to deploy it, and how should we go about doing that? And if they're coming up with their own ideas and then embracing them, and then you actually utilize them, you're going to get more buy-in. So just, that's just for just general reference for other people that might be going down this path or wanting to go down this path. I would recommend, involving your staff that are actually doing the work at all aspects of the planning and implementation process. But what are some of the things that the realized benefits of the system now that you've used the technologies for a year? You're a year out from it. What are you seeing? What pitfalls, if any, and what benefits, if any, are you seeing?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is sort of how we responded during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Obviously, we were riddled with requests to produce monoclonal antibodies and vaccines, and there was a lot of detailed preparation instructions and emergency use authorizations. So it was one of the welcome benefits of deploying this technology was that we were able to sort of incorporate all those detailed compounding elements to be in strict accordance with emergency use authorizations. It allowed us to analyze various monoclonal antibodies. Our vaccine deployment strategy was supported in part by this IV workflow technology. And we also found that there was a welcome benefit into taking elements of compounding that are often overlooked. Like, for example, we were able to incorporate vital compounding instructions to certain products that, unless you're a seasoned pharmacist who may know that a particular product needs to be in a non-DEHP container, the technology allowed us to sort of route the selection of products and materials that really coincide with the specific natures of those medications. We also saw a very substantial cost savings. Our IV workflow technology allows for technicians and pharmacists to self-correct potential errors in real time before it's too late. So obviously in ISMP, they discourage syringe proxies, not only because of the potential safety pitfalls, but we work with very expensive medications, some oncolytics that cost tens of thousands of dollars a dose. So we can't have one of those oops moments where after a medication is made incorrectly and we realize it at the back end of a checking process and we have to scrap the dose. We found that this IV workflow technology allowed us to have our personnel self-recognize any potential errors, make those corrections before they completed the process. So we found our waste rate was reduced. We also found that we can optimize the usage of partial vials. In a lab that has multiple hoods, you often don't know if your counterpart had, say, prepared a vial that is under a 6-hour dating usage period. And obviously that technology allows us to alert personnel that there's something in the lab that can be utilized. So we did find a cost savings associated with that. And then the other benefit was I was able to get real world data back and feedback to our personnel. So a lot of times, it's speculative as to their performance, their output, their productivity. They're often struggling to get feedback. One of the coaching moments that I tried to develop is to kind of give continual feedback to our staff. So part of that quality improvement is letting our personnel know, where they stand relative to their peers. And this technology definitely gave us the ability to do that.
That's awesome.
And then I think finally, like, the technology allows us to respond more efficiently to med errors, to drug recalls. And we don't ultimately know how in 2024, 2025, the idea of QC codes and different barcode technologies, how those elements will play in pharmacy in general, with the Drug Quality Security Act coming around the path. The unit of use barcode technologies, we probably will be able to leverage a great deal of information from those scans beyond just identifying the products. So having a system in place prior to those changes, at least, will probably put us in a better position to kind of pivot and address those challenges when we face them.
Yeah. I have one final question for you. And we didn't discuss this, and I hope I'm not putting you too much on the spot. But the one thing that's gonna be in most people's minds that are listening to this conversation are gonna be the costs involved with all this stuff. So the question I have is, a year out now, have you done like a cost benefit analysis with how much the system cost versus, you said that you've saved a lot of money in reducing waste and eliminating waste, which is excellent. But have you done that cost benefit analysis, and where do you stand 1 year out from the program implementation?
Well, we certainly benefit from our size. There is an economies of scale element to deploying any IV technology. Obviously, with our production output being 250,000 doses a year, it's easy to sort of break it down per dose. Our particular platform, we quantified a per dose cost of approximately $1 a dose. Now, again, 250,000 doses a year, that obviously is a high number to justify financially. But when you think about, a needle may cost $1 now, an alcohol wipe may cost $1, obviously there's no price to safety, but the aggregate of our production, we certainly benefited from the size of our institution. I would see that there still may be challenges to smaller and middle-sized institutions that are investigating alternate, products to put into play. So, our financial analysis, we benefited from the economies of scale and our just sheer volume. We haven't quite quantified all the savings resulting from utilization of partial vials. And that's certainly something we're looking forward in the future. But I will say that, what is the liability risk that an institution may have to deal with due to a med error? So I think so the cost benefit analysis, there's that big 500-pound elephant in the room, which is a catastrophic med event could really do a lot of harm and damage to an institution. So I think that should be factored into the cost analysis as well.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your insight and your experience in implementing this. And I think, as time goes on, I think the technology pricing will go down, and hopefully those mid to smaller size institutions. There's a lot of hospitals that are rural, CAH hospitals that are don't have a budget for anything like this. Barely have a budget for the meds that they're bringing in. But it'd be nice to see some of these costs to implement this universally, honestly, because that's really what's needed. And in discussing a lot of the things in terms of gathering data and all that stuff, which I'm all for, and using it, like you said, as teaching moments for your staff, not as a punitive measure, but as a real learning moment to, like, this is where you're at, and this is where you're at among your peers. And maybe we could improve this or that and get you up to snuff with everybody else. So, but yeah, this has been an excellent conversation. It honestly, it'd be nice to even have you on again a year from now to kind of check back in to see what other things that you may have tweaked and other ththings that you may have realized in terms of cost benefits and all the stuff that we've discussed. So yeah, if you're open to that, I'd definitely love to have you on again, a year from now or 6 months from now, whenever, or if something major changes, let me know and we'll get you back on. But
certainly we'll do that.
But thank you again so much. It's funny how we just to kind of go off on a side note, it's funny how we sort of got in touch with each other, like most recently. And we grew up in the same, more or less, within 20 minutes of each other. And I actually, I knew and was good friends with your sister in high school. And
small world.
It's a small world. And pharmacy is a really small world. So it is. So yeah, but again, thanks for being on. Really appreciate all your insight, and hope to chat with you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks for joining us for the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. If you have a question or compliance-related issue, reach out to us at Visant Consulting. We can help with all kinds of compliance-related issues, from 340B to drug diversion to compounding. Let us be your guide to help you raise the bar in your own pharmacy practice. At Visant, we're all about transforming healthcare through pharmacy. Everyone on our team brings many years of experience, deep expertise, and a steadfast commitment to help you achieve high performance in all aspects of pharmacy. Visit us at visantinc.com to learn more. That's VISANTEINC.com.